right, welcome everyone. We'll give people just a minute to come in. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday afternoon or morning or evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Megan Stokel. I'm the marketing director here at FounderMade, and I've actually been behind the scenes on these power hours since we launched them in April of 2020, which feels like it was just yesterday and 5 years ago at the same time. But this is my first time on screen, so hello, super excited to be here. It's been really, really amazing to bring the community together for these power hours and really do a deep dive into the strategies and tactics that you, our FounderMade community, can use to scale and grow your businesses. And with that, I'm thrilled to introduce you to David Chin. He is the president and CMO of Lexer, a customer data platform that helps brands and retailers genuinely understand and engage with their customers in impactful ways. And he'll be leading today's Power Hour, walking you through the strategies and best practices for using your own customer data to boost your marketing performance. And as a reminder, we do have Zoom's Q&A and chat functions available to you. So go ahead and click those buttons at the bottom of your screen to say hello, introduce yourself, engage with the community, and of course, ask any questions that you have for David. And with that, David, I will pass it to you and let you take it away.
Thank you very much. Great to meet you, everybody. Our goal today is to make this as interactive as possible. So I'm really happy to, if you keep the questions, the Q&A firing, if there's a piece of content, I'll keep a close eye on it and I'll try and answer the questions that relate specifically to the content or any of those related topics. I'd love to make this as interactive as possible. We've got an hour together today. I'm going to try and get through the content in half an hour. We've had a lot of really great questions asked in the registration form. So we're going to make sure we get to all of those questions or as many of them as possible at the end of the session. So it's about half an hour of content. And look, our primary objective here for everyone is to give you some very tangible takeaways that you can adapt into your business today. So we really want to make sure that this is not a big Lexa sales pitch. It's actually about, how you can think about your customers and using the data that you have today in each of your life cycle steps to interact better and to drive better outcomes from those interactions. So like as a setup for this, McKinsey has famously come out with this quote, which is a really good scene setter for kind of why Lexa exists. And what they say is that the marketers and companies that don't have a strategy to maintain and grow their customer data is going to have to spend between 10 to 20% more on marketing and sales to generate the same returns. And so we're seeing the data landscape change. It's very dynamic at the moment with privacy, with COVID, channel switching. And so I think never more than before, this quote becomes more and more relevant. And it's a very good kind of introduction to who we are at Lexa. So at Lexa, we're all really focused on brands and retailers, and we help our customers to drive incremental sales through improved customer experiences. And the way we do that is by connecting all of the customer data that you have into one place and then providing the tools and services that help you generate meaningful insights into your customers, and then taking those insights into the way that you deliver personalized experiences at scale. Now, our business here in the US is focused solely on retail and consumer brands. So anyone that sells direct to consumer, we work with brands across all different size spectrums and categories. So we've got a lot of very specific domain expertise into kind of direct to consumer retail. And as I said before, like our mission, like the reason that we exist is really to solve the data challenges that stop brands today from orienting their business around their customer. Now, these challenges are both a combination of data and operational challenges. So the first one is there's been an explosion of systems that brands use today to manage specific touch points with their customers. So think of that as like e-commerce, point of sale, email, SMS, website, service, product. All of these systems create valuable data sources that hold a record of your interaction with the customer. And if those data sources all sit separated, you can't hope to understand the relationship you have wholly with an individual customer. Now, those mess of systems that you use that solve a specific niche point, often when you add them all together for your teams, they can be really difficult to use. Another challenge that we see very commonly are manual processes around customer insights generation and audience activation. So that might be that you're exporting orders out of Shopify into an Excel spreadsheet to do customer analysis, or doing one-time list extractions from systems and manually uploading audiences into Facebook, into Google, or into your ESP. Another one that's really interesting is this kind of question of who owns within your organization, who controls your customer data. And so in big companies, that's often the IT team. In small companies, it's decentralized. Our view is that one team should not be responsible for access and control of the customer data, that every team should have unfettered access to the information they need to genuinely understand customers and make great decisions around how you engage those customers. And then the final one is, like, we see lots of customers with great systems and technology, but if the teams internally are not adapted to the workflows, to how to use those tools, or are not empowered to use them well, then you will not make any progress. So there's a human component to this problem that needs to be addressed. Now, this is probably the most technical slide we'll have in the session today, and I'll go through this pretty quickly, but this is really a schema that you can use, and it's something that we see in leading brands on how they leverage their customer data to really provide those amazing experiences to customers. And like, starting on the left-hand side, it starts with identifying every source of customer data within your business, and it goes beyond just the things like your transactions and spend, but all the way into website browsing behavior, into any of the surveys that you're doing, or any net promoter score, sentiment-based surveys, or product reviews, all the way into your engagement data for how your customers interact with your email campaigns. But these brands that do really well around customer experience have all of those data sources integrated into a single view of customer. They have robust processes and automated processes to match all the data sets automatically and in real time. And then they spend a lot of time enriching the information and trying to structure the information so that it's simple and easy to use for business people. Then once you've done that, you can start to get into, the sexy things like predictive analytics. What's the likelihood that my customer will shop with me again? What are they going to buy? What are they likely to purchase next? Now, once you've structured your data, well, then you can get into the understanding piece. So how do you make that data accessible to teams so that they can generate meaningful customer insights and robust customer segmentation for messaging and for experiences? And how do you connect those customer segments into all of the channels where you interact with your customers? And one of the big challenges that we see today is just how brands think about managing and orchestrating experiences, not only across channel, but across teams, so that, the customer that receives a VIP promotional message, is that recognized that they're a VIP customer when they come into your service queue when they've got a return? Or if they visit one of your retail stores, does the sales associate have the opportunity to recognize them and greet them as a VIP? And then, look, after the interaction, it's about measurement. And so understanding whether that interaction with the customer, what was the response of that, and bringing that response information back into the data layer so that you can measure, iterate, and optimize. Now, one of the questions that we had coming through in the registrations was a theme, and the theme was, how do you not become overwhelmed by your data? And look, I know this feeling. First and foremost, I've spent my career working with retailers in kind of helping them to best leverage their data. So I know the feeling, the paralysis that comes with sitting in front of a reporting tool or a data set and not knowing where to start. Now, one of the things that we advocate for to try to stop this feeling of being overwhelmed is actually through the creation of the customer profile. And so we advocate for like really focusing on simplification and summarization of data. Because one of the first reasons that you become paralyzed when doing this type of like customer analysis is if the data is really granular or raw. And so if you're looking at individual order level data for customers, like that stuff's just so hard to work with. And so this is a screenshot from our platform, and it's a customer profile. The customer's Rip Curl, and the individual person is actually the marketing manager at Rip Curl, Sam. But you can see as you look through the profile, what we've done is summarized all of the raw order level transactional and product data into simple pieces of information that we call attributes. And so it's simple things like, what's the average time between Sam's purchases? And it's 47 days. How many items has he ordered? What's his average order value? How much did he spend in 2018 or 2019? And what products has he purchased? And so this summarization of data is the first step in making data simple and, avoiding that kind of paralysis that you get when approaching things. And each of these attributes is structured to answer a logical question that you'll have and then support segmentation and an activation. So it could be his total spend, so his customer lifetime value is $1,105. And so the question might be, show me my customers that have spent more than $1,000, and Sam would be one of those customers that pop up in that segment as you ask that query. So simplifying data is the first kind of antidote to the feeling of paralysis. So that's kind of Lexa and who we are. In our agenda today, we really want to take you through the customer lifecycle, all the way through how you build your email list, how you think about acquiring new customers, how you convert that elusive second transaction once you've acquired a new customer, and then how you think about improving your retention rates by winning back those lapsed customers and driving that critical piece of re-engagement. And then we'll step into the Q&A. Now, really what we're trying to do here is give you those tangible tips and tricks for how you can, make a performance boost to each of these life cycle steps. So the first one we're going to start with is how you think about growing your email prospect list. And in the registration questions, there were a number that related to, how you think about growing your email database. What do you do if you're starting from scratch? Like, what if you've got 0 customers? What do you do to get to the first 1,000 people in your email list? And so a lot of the thinking here relates to that, but it's also very applicable to the brands that, have an existing customer base, have been trading for a while, and really think about improving the quality of the prospects that you add to your email list. So the first thing that we advocate for here, and I think of this as being one of the most important things for any DTC brand, it's that Pareto distribution where the top 20% of your customers will contribute somewhere between 50 to 80% of your sales. And so understanding that distribution within your business is imperative, because if you look like this brand here on the left, where the top 20% of their customers makes up 91% of their sales, there's a lot of actions that you need to take as a business. I mean, the first thing is that the bottom 60% of this brand's customers only contribute 5% of their total sales. And then the bottom 80% only contribute 9% of sales. So wherever you have this skewed distribution, and look, what we see most commonly across, if you were to take an average across our customers, the top 20% of like the highest value customers will typically make up about 65% of your total sales. And so the first thing that you have to do is understand that distribution. If you have that pattern where a small group make up most of your sales, well, then you've got to start understanding who those customers are. And you need to disproportionately focus on them, because that's where you make all your money. And from an efficiency standpoint, you've also got to then say, well, for the customers that, maybe the bottom 60% where we only make up 5 or 15% of our sales, should we be really focusing on those customers? Maybe it's a case of you take out the ones that are not active and you think about maybe slowing down on those customers and focusing your investment on the ones where you make the majority of your revenue from. Once you've found that top kind of group of customers that make up the lion's share of your spend, the next thing that we advocate for is to start to understand who these customers are and look at the things. Are they all the same customer, or are there things that pull them apart? And so we do a lot of work with our customers on persona-based segmentation. And I know that when I say the word personas, half of you today will have a visceral reaction to that, a bit of a shudder, that might think of engaging an agency and paying thousands of dollars to do a big research study that you can't use across your entire customer database. We think of it in a more simplistic way, where we look at the data that we have on those customers, and within the kind of beauty and wellness category, what we love is that the majority of the products that are sold are functional products. So they tell you about the need state of the customer. A lot of the products are gender specific. So if I see male customers buying female products, it gives me an insight into their buying motivation, and it tells me that often it might be gifting related. And so what we kind of propose here, and in this example, it might be saying, look, can we identify a group of customers, and in this case on the left, women's wellness, who mostly purchase within a specific category and they purchase for themselves. I've spoken about the gifting segment, which is a really common segment. Another one that we'd like to find out is the bargain customer. So, we look at their mean discounting rate and whether they transact at full price or predominantly on promotion. That really speaks to buying motivation. So if you look at things like product, gender, and like discounting behavior, they're three really good places to start to try and get to some of the need states and build your personas around the customer's primary need state. Now, once you know this information, then one of the tactics we've had a lot of success with for our customers is using sweepstakes to then target these persona segments with relevant giveaways that attract them to enter the competition to then sign up to your newsletter. The reason we love this strategy is it has a lot of flow-on benefits beyond just growing your list. But we love the fact that you can grow your list and then try and convert these customers in email without being so beholden to Facebook for your acquisition efforts. So by growing your list here, can we then enroll them in a welcome series that we then convert them via email? So some of the things that we kind of love about this type of email list growth, in the registration form that you use to enter the customer, you should ask a few additional questions that help you to better understand the customer. So if you're a beauty brand, say a skincare brand, maybe it's a case of asking them what their primary concern is. So is it fine lines and wrinkles? Is it spots? Is it understanding what their key motivations are? We've got outdoors brands that, they serve rock climbing, backcountry skiing and trail running. And so they ask in the surveys of the data entry form, they ask you what you're interested in. And then they use that information to personalize the welcome series. And by personalizing the welcome series, it's everything from the products they recommend, the images they use, the athletes they use to promote, all the influencers that they put in front of the customer to just improve the relevancy of the messaging. Now, if you do this well and take your high value persona segments to build the lookalike audiences that you target with the sweepstakes, one of the things that we see is the quality of the prospect that you acquire through these sweepstakes is the conversion rate to order is much higher. But equally, we often see that the traffic that you drive to your site, a portion of that traffic will often convert in the product category that you're giving away. And so after registration, if you're giving away, in the outdoors category for us, we had one with Rip Curl with wetsuits. It was win a wetsuit, just contextually relevant coming into the fall. We then pushed people into the product pages for the wetsuits, and a bunch of the traffic converts and covers the cost of the media for the sweepstakes. So you're essentially capturing new emails to your database that the cost is offset by the transactions that you generate from the traffic. So there's a lot. When this is done well, it's quite a comprehensive strategy that not only adds to your email list, but collects valuable data, drives traffic and conversion to the site. The biggest thing about the persona-based segmentation, though, is that the messaging and creative and offer becomes really easy when you understand the segment that you're targeting. And so, here to pick one of them out for the male gifters, it might be win a romantic getaway for you and your partner. For the women's wellness, it might be a money can't buy year supply of product and experiences. But when you understand the segment, you can personalize the giveaway, and that has a huge impact on the conversion rate and the unit economics of the cost per email, and then the conversion rate post in the welcome series. So the next strategy we want to talk about is now moving into pure customer acquisition, so performance-based acquisition, and trying to continue the theme of focusing on your high value customers and thinking about how you differentiate your acquisition efforts so that you do acquire more of that top 20% of your customer base. So the first thing for you to do when considering acquisition, most acquisition campaigns are acquired on product. So you promote a specific product to an audience, and that product resonates with the audience, and they either convert or they don't convert. And so the first question that we ask is, what are the best products to use within your acquisition campaigns? And so what you're looking at here is a very simplified analysis that looks at each of your products. And we ask the question of how many customers have bought that product first? And when those customers buy that product first, what is their lifetime value? You will have some products that customers love to purchase first, so often bought first. And when they buy that product first, they go on to be high value. We call those your hero products. They're the products that you should really double down on in your acquisition efforts. Now, below that, you'll see high volume mass market. There will be some products that customers love to purchase from you first, but when they buy that product first, they don't go on to be very high value. Now, these will be products that might have a low average order value or a high rate of one-time buyers. And you've got to, if you're using these products for acquisition, then you really need to be very disciplined around what you do with them after, or the unit economics of acquiring them, because you've got to make sure you're making profit in the first transaction, because these customers are hard to grow the lifetime value of. The next one here is, if you kind of take the top left corner, is high value niches. So this one, not many people buy these products first, but when they buy them, they go on to be very valuable. Now, these products are fantastic with discipline. So you be really focused on your bid price and your ROAS when you're acquiring within those product categories, because if you get it right, you're not going to do huge volume, but you're going to acquire really valuable customers. And then in the bottom left, there's some products that people don't like to buy from you first and they don't go on to be high value. You should just avoid these at all costs, not use them in your acquisition efforts. There's a question that's just come up, which is, how do you condition people to pay full price when you're enticing them with discounts or freebies? So that's a really challenging question to answer, and without knowing the history of how your business is traded. But if you have historically had a very discount motivated acquisition pathway, the first thing I would say is you just need to start by segmenting out your customers that have bought from you with a significant discount versus those customers that haven't. And then I'd be testing, what are your non-financial incentives that you can use for these customers that drive an improvement in transactional performance? And so we've seen good success with things like order the next, it might be a cart abandonment series that encourages them to make a second transaction within a certain period of time, and you'll waive the free shipping threshold. So try and motivate them away from a percentage discount type strategy, potentially move them into either a bundling motivation, or get them into like get closer to the functional use case of your products and start to sell them on the function of the product and the outcome, as opposed to the discount being the motivation to buy. Personalization and relevancy of message is the best antidote that I've seen to discounting. That drives the best result. So kind of stepping back into this methodology here. So this is an apparel brand that we work with. It has a broad assortment. They're a not quite full-blown luxury, but they're like upper mid-market would be probably their positioning. Their two hero products were shirts and athletic jackets. So if you see there, those two products, 16,000 customers, 15,000 customers had purchased within that category first, which is significantly higher than sneakers and sport shirts as the next two. And when customers buy their shirts or athletic jackets first, you can see that their lifetime value is $1,900 and $2,000 respectively. And so as you run your eye down the column, you can see that that's kind of above average lifetime value, but the volume's really high, which is what makes those hero products, which is very different. If you kind of look at the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see skincare. So for this business, not many customers relative to the others buy skincare first, but when they buy skincare first, those customers only go on to be worth $743. So significantly lower than if you win new customers on shirts and athletic jackets. So with this understanding of what are your hero products, well, then you should start to lean into these products for acquisition. And so when it comes to then building your acquisition campaigns, your goal is to find the best shirt buyers and athletic jacket buyers to build the best quality lookalike audience that you can. And so in this example here, you can see for this brand, they had 32,000 shirt buyers and they have an average value of $1,247. And one of the things that we do is say, well, if we want to find the very best shirt buyers, what are the attributes or variables that are correlated with higher lifetime value? And in this example, it was recency, so customers that had shopped within the last 12 months. It was customers that are actively opted into email. It was adding gender and segmenting out all the women, focusing because they're men's jackets and men's shirts. And then it was adding a small threshold to say, just give us any of the customers that have spent more than $71. And by adding those variables to the audience, you go from having 32,000 shirt buyers to just 4,000 shirt buyers. But the big impact is you can see the average value of the shirt buyers more than doubles. So the 32,000 customers have an average value of $1,200, but the 4,000 that we get down to is the very best of those shirt buyers. They're on average worth $2,600. And so what you need to do is take those 4,000 customers, feed them into Facebook, build your lookalike audience on those 4,000 customers and target them with shirts. Now, when you have this approach to understanding that shirts is a hero product category, then finding the best customers that have bought shirts and then building your lookalike and targeting them with the shirts, this will have a very material impact on your return on ad spend, but also your ability to, once you acquire these customers, to drive the next transaction out of them. Equally, it makes the personalization of creative really easy. So you take your shirt buyers and athletic jacket buyers and you target them with your athletic jacket and shirt creative. And so the goal here is to try and make the link between audience and creative really simple. Okay, the third in the life cycle, and this is if I was to have a personal favorite, this is my personal favorite. I think it's actually the hardest thing that is presented to modern direct-to-consumer brands, and it's driving that second transaction. So if we look across an average of all of our customers' databases and we segment their customers by order frequency, one-time buyers will be the biggest segment in every database. So, and it'll typically make up between 40 to 80% of their files. And that tells us that, driving that second transaction is hard. The antidote or the answer to that second transaction is a combination of messaging the customer at the right time with the right creative on the right channel. And I know that this sounds like marketing 101, but it's quite complex when you think of the number of products you have and the number of different customer journeys present. So one of the first things, and this is the same brand that we looked at for acquisition, one of the first things that we do is measure the benchmark conversion rate to second order by the product of first purchase. So if you look here for denim, they had 7,000 customers that purchased denim first. Of those customers, 4,500 have gone on to make a second purchase, which is 62%. Whereas we looked at the skincare group before, so 4,900 have bought skincare, only 1,200 came back to make a second purchase, so 25%. That is a really big variance. And so you can start to understand why the skincare buyer is only worth $700 on average, whereas someone like the shirt buyer, where 55% of them come back to repeat purchase, why they're worth $1,900. Now, the benefit of this is to help you, it starts to continue to inform your hero product strategy, but it creates a benchmark. And our goal is to start to engage these customers with more personalized messaging and offers to try and improve this conversion rate to second order, because that's how we drop our one-time buyer volume. So the next question we ask is timing. What is the optimal time to message these customers? And you can see in an apparel example here, people that buy athletic jackets, the ones that come back and make a second purchase on average come back in nearly 300 days, whereas people that buy t-shirts come back in 125 days. So often we'll see really big variances in time to second purchase. Now, in the beauty and wellness space, the size or volume of the product can have a huge impact on time to repeat purchase. So if you've bought a 1 ounce moisturizer versus the pump pack at 16 ounces, well, the time to repeat purchase, you will see a big variance. The reason that we do this time to purchase is it starts to inform us of when we should increase the intensity of messaging, when we should start to really push on triggering those like replenishment or next purchase messaging. The average days, when you look at averages, can be very misleading. So you can see here that despite t-shirts being 125 days, 50% of the customers that repeat purchase do it in the first 30 days. So one of the things that we advocate for is not looking at the averages, because these can be badly impacted by a long tail of like slow repeat purchases, but really focus on the first 50% of customers. So for the t-shirt buyer that buys, we would be messaging them almost in the week after they've received their product with the next like recommendation of what products we think are best fit for them. Because we know that when they come back quickly. 65% of the repeat transactions happen within the first 3 months. So that's more intense. Whereas when we look at the athletic jackets, they've got a bigger distribution here later, more seasonal, buying them again in the next season or 2 seasons later. And so the intensity of messaging still needs to be, strong up front, but we might have a longer tail of seasonal messaging. Whereas we know with graphic, like with their t-shirt range, that when we get to the 1 year, 2 year mark, that the likelihood of repeat purchase becomes very low. After we work out timing, then we've got to work out what products do we present to the customer next. So we have a recommended product algorithm that does a lot of the heavy lifting here, but for like an explanation standpoint, we can look at what product they bought first and then what categories they shopped in second. And we see huge variances here. So if you look at the shirt buyer, 27% of the shirt buyers come back and buy shirts. So, if you don't have the systems or resource to do this sophisticated type of analysis, just target your customers with the same categories of product from the first purchase. Because overwhelmingly, the most commonly purchased second product is in the same category of first purchase. So you can see here, 27% for shirts and shirts. Denim is 24% of customers that buy denim come back a quarter, repurchase within the same category of denim. But when we look at the sports shirts group, you can see that the shirts group, they buy shirts, but there's a long tail of other products. So there's not really one clear category that stands out as being an adjacent cross-sell category. Whereas in denim, yes, they come back and purchase denim, but 15% also buy shirts. And so you see this variance. And so our recommendation is, well, you should send a message like this one that heroes denim, but you should be introducing the shirts range with the denim for the denim buyer. This campaign should be triggered. And if we go back for our denim customer, well, 40% of the denim customer repeat purchases within the first 30 days, 56% of them in the first 90 days. So our recommendation would be to start triggering this message to that group, in the 2 weeks after they make their first purchase, and start to really focus on, what are the great other denim products we have, and what are the great shirts that complement the denim products that you've purchased or the denim products that we think you'd like to purchase. But to really maximize your performance here, you can't rely on just email. And so you need to lean into your other channels to maximize reach. So whilst emails are fantastic, and if it's their first purchase, the hope is that they've subscribed and enlisted into your email. But then some won't. And for some, messaging them in email and in other channels like direct mail or in paid social become a really viable strategy to increase the number of touch points and improve that conversion to second order. Now, the last category in the life cycle is around improving retention rates and how you drive win back. So kind of just building on that previous point, one of the big mistakes that we see a lot of brands make is they rely exclusively on email to do their retention efforts. And so one of the things that we do with our customers in the very first week of working together, we focus on what's your channel addressability. And so we look at customers, and if you look on the left here, active is, for this example, was customers that had purchased in the last 12 months. Inactive was 12 to 24 months, and lapsed was 24 months plus. And so of the lapsed customer group, the first question we ask is how many of them are opted into email versus opted out? And in this example, it was about half of the lapsed customers were still opted in. But just because they're opted in doesn't mean they open your email. And so you need to ask one more question, which is, of the opted in customers, how many of them have actually opened one of your emails in the last 6 months? 6 months is pretty generous. Like I would say 3 months is a really good period as well. Now you can see here that really of their lapsed base, in this example, it's only about a quarter of their lapsed customers are actually addressable via email. And it's really common for us to see more than 2/3 of your lapsed customer base not being addressable via email. And so that means that you need to make them addressable on other channels. So we did this with Black Diamond. We really focused on improving reach by targeting customers in paid social was the channel. And the campaign is incredibly simple. And so for them, they were looking at customers whose last purchase date was more than a year ago. For the ones that were addressable on email, they sent them an email. Simple, strong messaging. We miss you. Sure is lonely out here without you. Anyways, we noticed you haven't dropped by for a while. Maybe you've been out on an adventure, or maybe you've been waiting for something special. So the messaging is directly linked to the time since last purchase. Whereas for the ones that are opted out of email and have not opened an email in the last 6 months, we took exactly the same creative with the same messaging, but just purposed it into Facebook and Instagram ad unit and targeted those customers that are not addressable on email. And the big message for everyone here is just because a customer does not continue to opt into your email list does not mean that they'll never transact with you again. Like I hate email because it's work. So my preferred engagement is social because I'm in a completely different mindset when I'm scrolling through my social feed. So for them, the email campaigns had an amazing uplift to performance. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is, that group of opted out customers that haven't shopped for a year with a good message that's relevant and personalized and an offer, they were still able to drive a 4.5 times return on ad spend from targeting that audience. So you still can productively win back those customers that are opted out of your email list. Another one of our customers, Wonderside, it's an amazing brand out of Austin, Texas that focus on kind of natural home herbicides and pesticides. They focused on using direct mail as their re-engagement channel for opted out customers. And so for Wonderside, we focused on a really simplified RFM segmentation that just looked at active, inactive, and lapsed, and high value, low value. And so you can see here for the active high value customers, it's about rewarding and retaining. For the inactive high value, it's about re-engagement. For the lapsed high value, we just want to reintroduce, say, hey, a lot's changed, come back. For the more active and active low value, it's about cross and upsell. And, for the low value lapsed customers, it's really low touch. So what Wonderside did is they took those high value segments and took the ones that have unsubscribed, took the ones that are inactive but still subscribed, and took the ones that are really lapsed but still subscribed, and they sent a direct mail campaign to these 3 subsegments. The messaging was varied by the segment. So for this high value group that had unsubscribed but was more recent, it was all about reward and retention. For the inactive group, it was a re-engagement message like, hey, we miss you, do you need any more? For the lapsed segment, it was about a reintroduction. Hey, we've got a lot of new products in our line. Come back and check out the new products that's changed in the 2 years since you've shopped with us. When you do direct mail, you've got to be really focused on testing. And so you need to have a very robust testing framework, because these customers might be receiving your paid ads, might be receiving your emails. You've got to really work out whether that expensive mail piece is actually lifting their transactional behavior. So what we did for them was just take those high value customers. We held out a 10% control group so that they didn't receive the direct mail campaign. And then we measured the uplift in sales of the control group versus the A/B splits that we tested creative in. And this messaging framework and measurement framework is really important, because you can say, look, all customers are likely receiving the same campaigns. The only difference is these ones didn't get the direct mail piece. So if this group grew by 10%, but these groups grew by 20%, we know that there's a 10% lift as a result to the mail piece. And so for this brand, the results were incredible. They did a number of sends to the audiences. The first send to the unsubscribed segment, that was high value. The ROIs were very, very high. You can see there's a big drop between the first and second send, but still maintaining good ROI within the second send. So don't be afraid of kind of multiple touches as you start to think about this. Now, questions come in. How do you get that crossover to identify a lapsed email subscriber on social media? So Stephen, the way we're identifying those lapsed email subscribers is through your customer data in the email list. And so we're analyzing their email engagement behavior within your list. And then we are taking a segment of those customers and we're onboarding them into social as a custom audience so that you can make them addressable with advertising as a specific audience within Facebook. It brings us onto our questions. So I'm going to stop sharing. I think Megan's going to come back and help moderate some of the questions.
Yes, that was amazing. Such great information shared. And we do have a handful of questions that you guys as the audience had submitted upon registration, but be sure to use the chat and the Q&A if there's any other questions that you have that come up as we're going through this conversation. So the first question that we have from our audience is, what is one key thing you wish all small startups knew about D2C e-commerce marketing?
It's that not all customers are worth the same. So the law of averages, it creates diminishing returns. So if you treat every customer the same, small businesses have really limited resources. And so you've got to make your limited resources work as hard for you as possible. And so if you take your available resource and you allocate that across every customer evenly versus taking your available resource and spending it on the customers that are high value and have the potential to become high value, the results that you'll achieve are demonstrably different. So don't treat each customer, reward your loyal customers and engage them disproportionately, invest in them disproportionately.
That is awesome advice. And on the flip side of that, there's lots of things that we should do and, lots of great steps to take. But what's something that you see, it's not all about the wins. Sometimes we learn through the mistakes we're making. So what are some key mistakes that you've seen that should be avoided?
Yeah, I actually love mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not testing enough. And so much of learning in today's kind of digital media ecosystem is about running controlled tests and learning where you lose and doing less of where you lose, because it's not all about where you win. So I love that. I would say thematically, maybe one of the biggest things is brands that have like it's how you think about messaging. And so one of the things that we see a lot in customers when we start working with them is their philosophy to marketing. And a lot of brands have a message first or promotion first marketing strategy. And how you identify that is it's usually they'll plan their marketing calendar almost a year in advance or 6 months in advance. That marketing calendar will include all of the promotional periods that are coming up and what offers they'll have in market and what products they're going to be launching new to market. And so if your marketing strategy is about you thinking of the message first and building your calendar around what messages you're going to be in market with, that's one approach. The other approach is customer first. And so identifying your customers in your database and considering what is the optimal message and engagement strategy for that customer. Now, you're not going to be able to do 100% of one or the other. So I'm not advocating for that. But if your whole business is predicated on, I already know all the campaigns I'm going to have in market, you will be missing opportunities to engage your customers. You'll be under messaging some segments, over messaging others, and you'll be missing opportunities to really get at that group of high value customers that makes up all your sales. So it's really about not having a totally campaign or messaging focused, but be a little bit more customer focused and reserve some of your marketing capacity, and that's budget, creative, team time and resource, to starting messaging around customers, to focus on who those high value customers are, who the one-time buyers are, who are the lapsing customers, and think of what's the optimal message or interaction to drive a financial outcome, a next transaction, a win back, a review, think of it that way.
That's great. And if we're, talking about just getting started and optimizing your resources with somebody who has a super limited budget, they're just getting started, they, really need to stretch their dollar, what are your top tips or tools for those people to use?
Yeah, I think there's probably two camps of those people. There's those that genuinely start from scratch, like zero customers, zero new product to market. You've really got to lean into influencers and organic social to drive reach and focus on building your community around content and value. That's the first thing, because you've just got to get started. I believe there was another question in the list that's probably relevant to this, but it's is there merit in having an e-commerce website just to get information on customers? And so, yes. So if you're in that position, you just need to recruit customer data at any cost. And that's really going to be through your organic social. You can start to use things like Facebook interest attributes to start to find audiences that you believe, in the absence of empirical data, you will start to, your initial focus groups will tell you about your customers. Understanding what their interests are on social is a really good question to ask those customers, and then use those to buy or build audiences around interest-based attributes in Facebook. That's a good starting point. That'll get you your first few customers, and then make sure for all of the new customers you acquire, I would disproportionately focus resource. I would phone call every one of them. I would ask them questions. Why did you buy? How did you find us? And I'd really make those customers feel special, because word of mouth is important. Now, if you've actually got some data and then you've got that kind of limited budget, lean into the strategies that we covered today. Focus on understanding those high value personas, do your sweepstakes and giveaways with offers linked to those high value personas, understand your hero products, double down on your most valuable customers, lookalike audiences with those hero products, go down that pathway.
That's great. And, just jumping back to, talking about having your own e-commerce site to intake that data and making sure that you're, building that community. Where do you see, we're seeing a lot of changes in the ways that, we're approaching people's personal data with, all these changes with like Facebook and iOS and all that kind of stuff. Where do you see the future of, intaking consumer data? Where are the most important points to have that information?
So it's around data collection. Like where do you, like what information do you prioritize to collect? Is that the, yeah. There's a slide in this deck, and I will share the content of this for everybody, that the most important pieces of information to get that I see very rarely collected: get gender. So ask a gender-based question in your subscription. Now, you've got to be really careful with how much information you collect in the sign-up, because we know that the more questions you ask, the greater the form abandonment or submission or conversion abandonment you'll have. So, we see customers make the order process as efficient as possible, but post-order trigger a survey or some data collection tools. Capture buying motivation, like who are you buying for and why are you buying, and capture information about the person to start. Gender. Age, I would like, I don't think age is as valuable as people think it is, because I see my 75-year-old mother buying products that I'd never thought I'd see her buy. And so I think age is not as valuable, but gender, buying motivation and need, the things that are really important because they're super actionable. And transactions, you just got to nail the transaction, the product.
Yeah,
it's super important.
Certainly. And on the subject of, sensitivity around people's data and what we're intaking, what are your thoughts on an SMS texting program? I personally have a background working in nightlife, in a past life. So we used a lot of SMS and texting for marketing on our like VIP list. And it was something that certainly felt special to people who were receiving that, first cut, being in the know. But also, there's like double-edged sword that sometimes texting can seem a little bit intrusive. So I'd love to know your thoughts on using SMS for marketing.
Yeah, I love SMS. It's exploding. I can, if I was to freeze frame and rewind 12 months, the proportion of our customers that use a SMS vendor, I would say has tripled in the last 12 months. So wow. That's a really, really hot category. And I think every new customer that we talk to in their stack, we just see that like Shopify Klaviyo attentive stack. It's just very, very, very consistent. What I would say about SMS is be careful. Start really, really slow, because you can have an adverse reaction to SMS. The brands that do SMS really well, they use SMS, they start it with related to the transaction. So it might be something like receive a shipping notification via SMS. So they pardon the word, but they breach that barrier through something that has ultimate utility for the consumer and is asking nothing back from the consumer. So if you think about it that way, that's a nice framework. Like, does it provide value to the customer? And are you asking them to do anything in your interest? And a shipping notification of your product's being shipped and it's due to be delivered, that meets the brief. So if you start there, and then once you've built that relationship and rapport across that channel and warmed the channel, kind of like IP warming in email, you can then start to maybe introduce some messaging that's like, hey, just wanted to let you know that. And then I would start with your highest value, most engaged customers first. I would make sure that the messaging is very personalized and really value accretive. And it has to be, because you don't like it's text. And so I would kind of start there really slowly and grow. And you need to, because it's not cheap. That's the other thing. It's expensive. It's not like email or, it's expensive. So start small, measure.
Certainly. And then also on that, scaling and what do you think, what are your top tips for finding the sweet spot between, staying top of mind and then spamming somebody and invading their privacy?
Yeah, there's the horrible answer to that question is that there's not one rule for all customers, because just like that value contribution slide that we showed where a small group makeup, those customers are probably really engaged in your messaging and want to hear from you often. And then the customers down the end of the chart, some of them are much less interested. Well, I think the best antidote to the fear of spamming is to ask the customer, how often do you want to hear from us? Lean into your preference center and ask, and then get the customer to put them in the driver's seat of your comms and experiences that you give them. Because you will have customers that love you, that want to hear from you a lot. You will have customers that are less frequent. So the first thing I'd say is ask them. The next thing I'd say is you can just segment out your customers by open rates, click rates, and volume of emails. And as customers start to stop opening your emails, I would lessen the frequency and increase the value.
That's great. I love that. And we have a question that came in from Sherry. She said, where do we learn in-depth marketing, messaging, and data interpretation if we're starting from scratch? Any tips or tools for that?
Look, where do you start? We run training courses, is like, one of the places. So we've been partnering with different organizations to run like 4-part training on how you start from building your view of customer to doing analysis to how you activate and how you measure. So I'd say I personally love podcasts. Like there's just so much amazing podcast content on digital marketing and tips and tricks. The retail community is very, very forthcoming with great content. I would start there. If you're looking for a partner, and that's where you start, you have to really assess a partner's ability to train and educate, not just provide software and disappear. So you need someone with meet their success team, understand the scope of services, ensure that they understand your current maturity and processes before you commit to working with any vendor.
That is wonderful. And we just have about 3 minutes left. So if anybody has any last minute questions, go ahead and throw them into the Q&A or the chat. David, is there any, last minute number one tip, anything that you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Look, I'm conscious that we've covered so much ground today. I think what I would say to everyone that's kind of come along, first and foremost, thank you for attending. I do appreciate your time. If you have any questions specifically, you can reach out to me here at my email. We'd love to chat to you, or equally, you can see the link here. You can come through our website and arrange a demo for what we do. But I do appreciate you coming along, and if we could be helpful to you in any way, I'd love to do that.
Awesome. And our final question before I jump into what we on the Founder Made side have coming up. What is the number one marketing trend you expect to have the greatest impact on this year's holiday season?
Yeah. Do you know what? This holiday season, I'm popcorn at the cinemas, excited about the upcoming holidays. Many of our customers, if we look across our Lexa customer base, in 2020, they acquired 79.8% more customers than they did in 2019.
Wow.
So COVID was an incredible accelerator for driving traffic to e-com. And so, but a lot of those customers are one-time buyers. And so, the thing that I'm most interested to see is, what are the engagement tactics for driving a next purchase in the holiday period out of that groundswell of customers that each brand's welcomed? And I think the thing that's going to have the biggest impact for those customers is to start your messaging and your personalization journeys as early as possible. And then you're going to have to be very, very targeted in the way that you message those customers to cut through. So definitely lean into their product of first purchase, jump on some of those insights that we shared with you around what products they're likely to buy next. And then, I would get into the scarcity messaging with them to say, limited time, get in and try and drive urgency and a strong call to action.
That's great. I mean, I'm super excited to see, how this holiday season shapes up as, the world is beginning to change again, and all kinds of new trends coming out. And I can't believe we're already more than halfway through the year. So it's already time to start engaging those customers for holiday season, which will be here before we know it. So we're just about at time. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. David, thank you so much for all this amazing information that you shared. As mentioned, we'll be sharing the presentation. We'll also share a link to the recording of this session so you guys can rewatch, catch up on anything you missed if you had to tune in or out today. And then for FounderMade, we have a couple of upcoming events. We have our summer Power Hour series, which we kicked off today. And we also have Power Hour on August 11th with Clearco and Estee Lauder, talking about how to fail forward and using those failures as an opportunity for growth. On August 18th, Pilot will be joining us and we'll be doing a deep dive into funding alternatives for e-commerce brands. And then on August 25th, Air House will be hosting a workshop on all the things you need to know to grow and scale your D2C brand from ideation to massively scaling. And then our next virtual summit will be our Future of Beauty and Wellness Summit on September 23rd. We have a really great lineup of speakers that we'll be announcing soon and some awesome beauty and wellness brands there. So thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we can't wait to see you again soon.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks so much, David.